Directed and co-written by Junaid Sayed, we are talking War of the Worlds, The Attack. Now this of course based on the classic H.G. Wells story, and there have been a multitude of adaptations at this point, so I'm sure most of you know the story for this one, so I'll keep the plot synopsis somewhat brief. It focuses on this area of the UK under attack from invaders from Mars. These invaders come down in these pods and kind of go around in these tripod kind of machines, killing everyone they kind of come across with their heat rays. And the movie focuses on three friends as they traverse the landscape trying to find safe haven, looking for a loved one of one of the group. Along the way they encounter a variety of human characters and of course trying to evade the aliens. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. This is a low budget movie. You can't really compare this apples to apples with the likes of the kind of the Tom Cruise movie or even the kind of the 60s movie that kind of came out, 50s, 60s, whatever that was. You know, because of this is a low budget kind of straight to DVD, VOD movie, and they were sort of bigger movies for their time. But what can we say in the plus column with this one? What can we say that works? Here's one thing I was not expecting. This movie is surprisingly faithful to the source material. Now, if you compare it to like the Steven Spielberg, Tom Cruise movie, or the kind of the older movie, they took a lot more liberties. And this one does have a few tweaks, but for the most part, it is surprisingly faithful to the source material with character names, places, events in that kind of the source material, all kind of, you know, tweaks for kind of a modern story, but nonetheless, it relatively kind of accurate, I have to say. So, you know, if you want a more faithful adaptation, at least in kind of like in spirit, then I think then this is maybe a movie you may want to kind of check out. So yeah, so that was pretty surprising, to be honest with you. And here's another thing I was kind of quite pleasantly surprised with. When you talk low-budget science fiction movies, your mind normally goes to the Asylum and movie kind of studios like that. And the Asylum have actually made War of the Worlds films. And the CGI in those low-budget science fiction, you know, movies tends to be on the weaker side, shall we say. So I was pleased to say that the CGI and the effects on this movie, whilst not blockbuster level, are surprisingly good. You know, so the actual kind of the Martians, the kind of the set pieces where we see the kind of the tripods wrecking destruction upon the UK, fighting kind of air, you know, jets and things like that. I was like, wow, that's actually pretty impressive. It looks like they've got some certainly for the budget, some skilled kind of like you know, CGI creators to do a decent enough job here to make it, I think, look pretty good. And they kind of they incorporate the kind of the CGI to the kind of the live action movies pretty well as well, I have to say. So yeah, pleasantly surprised with that one, I will say. And you know, it's got all of the elements I think you'd expect from an adaptation like this. Now the book, or the original source material, the radio play, you know, the Jeff Wayne musical, it's not exactly an action extravaganza. This property never was. So don't be expecting like a science fiction action film. I mean, the kind of the tripods and the kind of the aliens, they're more in the background in this story. And they always have been in the source material. This has never really been, despite the name War of the Worlds, it's been a focus on these survivors really. And you know, it still keeps to that. I mean, it helps with the budget, obviously. But you know, it's kind of like a fairly good adaptation, if we're being completely honest. It does kind of I think capture the spirit of the original sort of source material. So sounds all pretty good so far, doesn't it? Why do you feel like I'm waiting for the ball to drop? Here's what's wrong with this one, and unfortunately, it's a doozy. The acting here is bad, and I mean really bad. Okay, let me go into a little bit more detail here. So, you know, it's focused on these three characters. We have a plethora of other kind of supporting characters through the movie. The acting is never great. There are a few smaller roles which I think are okay, but for the main characters, it's not good. And one of the main actors here is really bad. I don't like to get too personal when I'm talking about, you know, someone's acting necessarily, but one of these characters should think about a career, a different career. Genuinely horrible acting, but no one is great. It goes from absolutely horrible to kind of like just about acceptable. That's your range here. And unfortunately, one of the really bad ones is a major character. So, you know, all three of our main characters aren't good, but one is terrible. So you couple that, unfortunately, with some quite bad dialogue as well. So, I mean, some of the dialogue is kind of, you know, lifted from the source material, but some of it is not, but it's incorporated in a very kind of clunky manner. So you have bad actors with kind of like poorly conceived dialogue. It does not make for an entertaining film in regards to characters. And here's the other weird choice about this, after we're on the subject. The choice here, one of the kind of the differences maybe with this one, is the characters, our three main characters, are meant to be quite young. They act like, I don't exactly know how old they are supposed to be, but they act like teenagers. But they're played by 30-year-olds who look like 30-year-olds. It is like very weird. Our main guy, Herbert Wells, our main character, he's 30, I checked. I couldn't find the date of birth for the other two. So he was born in 93. This movie came out in 2023. You know. Yeah. It's awkward. It's awkward. Watching like these adults, 30-year-old adults, driving around on BMXs, acting like 15-year-olds. It was weird. And somewhat uncomfortable in a way. So there's that. So it's not looking good so far for the kind of the human element here. There are plenty of kind of logic issues here, and again, things has been updated for like to bring it into the modern age, for example. At the beginning of the movie, we have our three protagonists very easily kind of sneak into this kind of crash site without barely any security. Maybe it's just crashed, we can accept that. But then we're meant to believe that these three are some type of student astronomers, and yet they're looking at something which is clearly a ship. And I go, I don't think this is a meteorite. I'm thinking, oh my God. And then it opens up to reveal one of the aliens, and one of the sort of the characters got a video camera pointed right at it, and then they go and bump into their kind of like lecturer or teacher or something and try and describe it, but they don't show them the video like they've just taken. So it is like filled with just silly dumb moments, unfortunately. And I mean, the movie is faithful to the source material, but as I've kind of mentioned, this property was never really an action film. So I have seen some complaints saying it's slow. It's kind of the story, if we're being honest. But what I would say is that it does focus on some elements, maybe for a little too long. This scenes with the preacher, I think, go on for a little bit too long, to be honest with you. It felt a bit unnecessary. And a few other scenes, I just felt kind of just weren't particularly kind of all that interesting. It is a lot of walking around in the woods and the kind of the streets, this movie, but again, I won't criticise it too much for that, because it is really faithful to the material in that respect. Some things they can't do because of budget. There is a kind of I suppose one of the major action sequences that is in the property is not in this really. But yeah, it's still not a bad effort, I don't think, for a clearly low budget movie. But the problem is you just can't get invested in the characters because their acting is so wooden, the dialogue is so clunky, and these actors just look so out of place. I mean, it seems to me that they try and the fact that they're riding around on bikes, it's like, are you trying to cash in on Stranger Things here? I mean, it just looks like cast younger actors then. Yeah, it was like, it was weird. It was poorly handled, that bit. So it spoils what I think is the framework of a reasonable adaptation. Now, this is obviously based on an existing material, so I can't particularly say it's like, you know, it's the structure of the story is down to the right to this kind of movie. It's obviously based on a pre-existing property. Overall, I'm gonna have to say a 4 out of 10. The acting and the character work here, the casting is so bad. It really does, I think, push it to a below average adaptation. But I don't think it's that bad. I have seen kind of like 1s and 2s. I don't think it's that bad. But I do think on a technical element here, it's actually fairly strong, especially considering the budget. And it's filmed fairly well as well. Actually, the camera work and the cinematography is pretty good. It's just the humans element here, which is a real problem for me. 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.